where horror lies.
Guys, Rob from Georgia here with you again. I'm your regular Wednesday evening host here at BodyBags. It is week 423, and it is the beginning of October, this random week, and so I've decided to run with a Dollar Tree pickup just from the other day. Of course, by the heading, you already know what it is, but believe it or not, I found this at Dollar Tree among two other small little gems. Oculus and that Michael Flanagan film and The Raven. I found all three on DVD, obviously for $1 each, right? But when you go on to Amazon, like if I were to, for whatever reason, want to buy all three on DVD right now, I'm telling you, it's like 65 bucks, man. I mean, you know, 14 for Oculus and 35 or 45, depending on the format you want this. You know, it's almost 65 bucks. 3 movies. So, you know, now that it's October, you really do need to find your closest Dollar Tree and get in there and check it out, because you're not going to know what you're going to find. So anyways, Nicolas Cage, 1988, from Robert Bierman. Not really known for much in terms of the genre work, but he did have a few people on this movie that worked in here that do have roots in others. Your composer actually did the composition for Rawhead Rex, which is interesting. Your cinematographer has roots in having shot Child's Play 2, and as a cameraman, I'm thinking He Knows You're Alone as a gaffer, and even God Told Me To as an assistant cameraman, which is pretty cool. Makeup, this guy was Ed French. Got some notes in front of me. His roots go into Amity 2, The Possession, Sleepaway Camp, The Stuff, Blood Rage, Terminator 2, Star Trek 6. You know, a lot of history there. And the special effects, Roger Shaw, some things, you know, that I've run across more times than not of late. Jedi in 83, Temple of Doom in 84, and Company of Wolves. So I mean, point is, there's some people with some good hands on here making this movie. It is a bit of a cult classic, from my understanding. I'm not that familiar with it, but basically follows the exploits of this literary agent, of course, played by Nicolas Cage, who when we first meet him, he is really already has begun his descent into madness, and you know, and it's subjective. A lot of this film, I think, is subjective as to the whys of everything, but you know, I think we're led to believe that much of his life just holds absolutely no meaning, and he's really getting closer and closer to checking out. But he needs to do it in dramatic fashion, in some way that gives him much more purpose or drive, even if its ultimate end is the end of his physical existence. And so he suffers from this delusion, and I do believe, and there's going to be some spoilers here a little bit, but it's an old movie, but it is definitely worth checking out just for Nicolas Cage's performance. And Maria Conchita Alonso, who plays this girl Alva, who he abuses throughout this movie. It's hilarious. And then, Elizabeth Ashley as his therapist. We sort of catch up with him. He's seeing a therapist, and he's sort of, but you can see he's unraveling. And when he suffers this delusion that he's been, in fact, bitten by a vampire, a girl that I think probably he wanted, he was infatuated, smitten with, and he knew he couldn't have her, or maybe he tried, and so she fits the narrative of just being this vampire who swoops into his apartment at night and feasts upon him, gorges on him, and of course he believes himself to be, you know, is becoming a vampire. And so this helps give him purpose and drive, I think, which helps allow his over excess, in terms of his over dramaticness of acting, to really start like a volcano, start to erupt from time to time, which is pretty funny. There's some scenes that are absolutely hilarious. But overall, I was sort of like, this movie could have been a real cult classic type black comedic type film that really could have stretched some boundaries. There is a scene towards the end. I mean, you know, he gets to the point where he's, you know, his apartment ends up becoming a mess. He tears it up, and it reminds me of Eddie Brock's apartment. Just watched Carnage last night with my boys. And anyways, he ends up creating a makeshift coffin, which he hides under, which is his couch. I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. Some of the things that, just the visuals. And so he just basically starts descending quickly, and and he ultimately will commit an act of murder, which is, there are some unsettling moments, but they're goofy too. Like, he believes he's becoming a vampire, but yet the only mark on his neck is from where he shaved and nicked himself. And his teeth aren't coming in like you would believe. Even though we see him in the reflective mirror, he doesn't see himself in a reflective mirror. So he ends up trying to buy himself a really, really, really expensive pair of vampire teeth. Well, I can't remember exactly why he doesn't opt out for the good ones, but he ends up opting out for like a $3 or I don't know, $1 or something pair of the old cheap white, the old ones that you remember as a kid, putting in, Halloween night or whatever. And it just makes him so stinking goofy. And then there's scenes where he starts, pretending he's Orlok or something in terms of how he carries himself and his body expression. And it's a fun movie, man. It really is. It's weird when you've gotten so, like, I love him in The Color Out of Space. I thought that was just an absolutely insane adaptation of the H.P. Lovecraft story. He is, it's hard to go back. This film was not the easiest thing for me to navigate through, although I think on multiple viewings, I think I'll grow to enjoy it more and more, if that makes sense. It is definitely worth seeking out. If you've never seen it, I think it's streaming. I wish I would have looked, but it just seems like it might be Prime or something. It's definitely worth checking out. It's a different type of vampire movie that sort of, I think, leaps off of the Arton idea, but is, again, very black comedic type film. It's just a weird romp into someone who's psychologically is just fragmenting, but he's looking to grasp onto something that will, again, as I said, give him purpose to that end. And so becoming a vampire is that purpose. It's the vehicle which we see him. And there's a scene towards the end where he's wandering the streets of New York. And this does take place in New York City, which is awesome because the first shot is the skyline. And, of course, what do we see? The two towers. And we'll see this multiple times throughout the film, which is really cool. That's a great thing about going back into the 80s and especially movies that take place in New York City, right? We get to always see that skyline. But yeah, it is an interesting experiment, and what he does to this poor girl Alva, man, it's just it is absolutely hilarious at points. But anyway, so it's a fun ride. It is definitely a fun ride, and I'm just glad that I went into Dollar Tree the other day, and I'm glad that I just stumbled on this. And so whether there's an upgrade in the future, it really just depends on I guess if there's another release of this film. But for the moment, at least I got it. And I did see Carnage last night. Just a few thoughts. I took the boys, just needed a real mental break for a couple hours. And visually speaking, I thought it was a pretty stunning film to watch in terms of just the aesthetics, the visuals, just the ride with Eddie Brock in Venom. Of course, Andy Serkis directs that movie, right? So it's kind of funny how you almost have that going back to when Gollum would, had those talks with his inner self, and you get this a lot, and it's absolutely hilarious. There is a if you haven't seen it yet, there is a mid-credit scene that is, it's great, man. It's great. But the movie itself, it probably lacked some of the substance I would have been hoping for. But then again, how much can you pack into one film? And the main sort of thing is seeing Carnage and Venom go at it, and that was, as I said, aesthetically, visually speaking, it was a fun ride, and it was shot on the Extreme Atmosphere, which is like a step down from IMAX, which is always fun. So I didn't really mean to tailspin into that, but I just saw it last night, and so I don't want to make it into a real review. But if you haven't seen Carnage, it is definitely worth seeing it on the big screen. Just aesthetically, visually, it is a fun ride. And who is that? Woody Harrelson. He is a ride in this movie too, as Carnage. and it was just fun. It was a fun, so it was a fun evening, and then I came home and I popped Vampire's Kiss, and which you know, it's good. It's good. So anyway, so I think I'm going to wrap it up about their Robert Bierman film. It is week 423. I think next week is the year 1986, and I'm doing The Wind. So I think I'm actually going to watch that today, I think. And then by the end of the month, we have Island Horror, right? Yeah, Island Horror. That's my theme week. And I'll just say to this, thank you for the comments, those who commented when I talked about my wife a little bit. She's doing great, and but unfortunately my mother-in-law has been in the hospital. They live up in New York. We live in Georgia, of course. And she's been in the hospital, and all I'll say is just we're hoping for the absolute best, but we're also preparing for the absolute worst. And so the family is sort of in these stages of reacting and making traveling plans, and she's kind of going back and forth. And so if I suddenly drop off the radar here for a little bit, that's why. It's just lately, these last few weeks have just been a mental drain. And so anyways, I think I'll drop it at there. Check out your Dollar Tree. And again, any place like a used by trade, October is always great because people are, I don't know why, but people are dumping stuff. And so, you know, the closer you get to Halloween, man, you're going to go into a place like, well, for me, Second and Charles, CD Warehouse, and I'm going to find some absolutely insane deals on some great movies. October just is the month, and it's Halloween time, right? So, here we go. We're going to end on that. My Bulldog's awesome yesterday, and as always, we end these things off with Go Bills.